Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Helping Friendly podcast. I'm Megan. Happy President's Day. It is Monday, February 20th. I hope a lot of you have had work off today. Jonathan's already drinking. I'm off today
Cheers.
from my day job of teaching America's youth. I'm recording from the mountains, which has been really nice. It's Monday of a week that I've been waiting for a really, really long time because it's Mexico week. And
Is that a real week?
I'm so excited.
No, it's not on my
Yes, it's a
calendar.
real week.
It is for
Yeah,
me.
it's on my
Hey, right on.
calendar. It's on Brian's calendar. And this year is going to be different because I'm going to be on the beach with them this year for the first time. And I've just been waiting for so long. So I can't believe it's actually happening. I'm so excited. But before we get to that, we have a pod to do today. We're back 40 for 40. We are talking about a show that Jonathan selected that is so great. It's 10/20/1989. So,
Love this show.
Jonathan,
Love this
hi.
show.
I know. Will you tell us why you chose this show?
It's probably my second favorite show from the year. As I was saying backstage before we started, we did a party with a bonfire and all that last week for 1988, so I didn't want to repeat that theme by choosing the 5/28/89 Jens Farm show, which is my favorite show from this year, 1989. This, again, as I said, is my second favorite. This is a great tape. It's got a couple important moments, not necessarily debuts, although there is at least one important debut, important to me, maybe not to anyone else.
I'm wondering which one it is.
Yeah.
And we'll get there.
Okay.
But a really nicely recorded show, just great performance. It's got horns. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got Trey dropping an F-bomb from the stage. Come on. How could you lose?
Yeah, it's an awesome show, and I'm so glad we're going to talk about it today. RJ and Brian are off today. They'll be back next week for our Mexico recap. But today we have a very special guest, a good friend of mine, fellow Fish podcaster, Brian Weinstein from Attendance Bias. Brian, thank you for being here today.
Thank you for the invitation. I was saying earlier that for my own podcast called Attendance Bias, you can see it on the screen, that a lot of guests pick shows that are more recent than the one we're going to talk about today. So it really is a pleasure to break down, listen to, and discuss a show from pre-modern Fish. Not
It's
quite
funny,
pre-recorded, but pre-modern.
Hadn't really considered that you only talk to noobs on your show. No,
That's not true.
obviously, That's not true. I'm just kidding, of course. Great show. I'm pleased to have been on it, although we talked about a 2.0 show, which was weird.
Your episode was great, though. It was really cool. I loved listening to it because it was just such a different episode than you usually get. Usually people are talking about like, this was the best show of my life, the best day of my life. And
Most people don't cry when they are on
Yeah.
that podcast,
But it was really moving and I loved it. And I got to be on too. And it was one of my favorite things I've done. So thanks, Brian, for having us both.
Thanks for being on the show. And not only that, but Brian Brinkman and RJ have also here. I've collected the whole set.
Hey,
You got us
nice
all.
work. Shout out here to anybody listening who maybe attended some really early Fish and would like to talk with Brian about it on his show. You should reach out to him because he, does great stuff. It's a lot of fun and I recommend it.
It's at attendancebias@gmail.com. And I think I've only had 2 guests choose shows from 1990 or earlier. And that could come up in our conversation as we go. David Zizix Steinberg, we all know him. He picked a show, I think from 1990 or 92, maybe. And then Sue Drew, who was Fish's A&R person at Elektra Records, picked a show from, I think, 1990 at the Marquee in New York City.
It's an important show
Awesome.
for the band.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. And I would say, even if you're not someone who is used to getting on a microphone and talking about Fish, I would definitely think about doing it anyway. I've sent some friends Brian's way and they had not podcasted or anything before. And I think they really loved it. And it's just so nice to hear from a variety of people.
Brian makes it easy. He's not mean to his guests like we are.
Yeah.
So,
he won't make fun of you like we might.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Are we mean?
No, we're super nice. We're super nice. Okay, so now it's time to get into our show and talk about 1989. And before I dive into what was going on with Fish, then I think we should talk about what was going on in the world in 1989.
Nothing much. It's just like a blip of a year, I think. Nothing
Yeah.
important happened, right?
Same shit, different year.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
You know, downfall of communism happens all the time.
Yeah, it's fine. Regimes fall, regimes rise. No big deal. It's like what, like walls, maybe in Berlin, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
What else happened? Tell us? You've got a little list, don't you, Megan? Can you tell us
I've
what
got a
happened
little
that year?
list. Yeah, we've got Tiananmen Square. That's going on in China. So that's kind of a big deal.
Kind
That
of a big
protest
deal.
is, yeah, kind of a big deal. We've got the Game Boy coming out. Kind of a big deal.
Not
Yes,
kind of. That
Impactful
is
to
a big
many,
deal.
impactful to
Huge, big
many
deal.
Fish fans. I was
Yes.
a little past
Yes.
portable gaming devices myself, but a lot of people listening probably cared quite a bit.
Yeah, big deal. And what else? We've got
The debut of
other
The
th-
Simpsons, by the way, it should be noted.
Oh, yes.
Nobody's
Wow, I
even
can't
heard
believe
of
The
that
Simpsons
show
are that
anymore.
old. That's crazy. The Simpsons have been on forever.
Well, speaking of
I didn't
40
realize.
for 40, they're approaching. I think they just signed a contract recently to get to 40 seasons.
Amazing.
Really, that's incredible.
Yeah, and they
Good for
still
them.
deliver a few good jokes every episode, so worth watching, I think, sometimes.
I haven't watched The
Yes.
Simpsons in so long.
Yeah, we check it out. It's always good for a laugh.
Yeah, Ralph Wiggum is one of my favorite characters of all time. He's just the fucking best.
What a
Like
choice.
his lines are the best. He's my favorite. He's my favorite character on the show.
So should we talk about some music from the time period? Let's see.
Yes,
It's
tell us, Jonathan.
1989. So I'm going to give you a couple albums that were huge that year. Earlier in the year, Like a Prayer held the #1 album slot for a little while. It knocked out Tone Loc's "Loked After Dark," which itself knocked out Debbie Gibson's "Electric Youth."
God, this is all my shit.
Yeah, Fine Young Cannibals, they were huge. They came after the Like a Prayer. The Prince Batman soundtrack. Can't say it, but I mean it. 6 weeks at #1. Big deal. As we draw closer to October, where we're really focusing, we have, a couple weeks of the New Kids hanging tough. Milli Vanilli, Girl You Know It's True, held 2 weeks as the #1 album.
Saw both of those acts. My first concert, New Kids, and saw Milli Vanilli too.
Where was that?
Everybody should be ashamed for
Detroit.
any contribution to Milli Vanilli's success.
Girl, you know it's true.
Yeah, great song.
Their behind the music episode was top notch. Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I remember seeing them and being like, whoa, like they're just flipping around on stage and they're singing at the same time. This is crazy.
Amazing, incredible, perhaps. So zooming down the list real quick, though, we have Paula Abdul only had 1 week with Forever Your Girl because Dr. Feelgood from Motley Crue knocked it off the charts and was the #1 record at the time of this show. To be dethroned, by Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation 1814.
That shit fucking rocked, by the way.
And by the way, Milli Vanilli would later get 3 more weeks in the #1 slot, broken up by 1 week of Billy Joel's Stormfront. So come
My
on.
boy.
Wow.
89.
Wow.
What a year. A couple key notes also singles wise, like #1 songs in October. We're just going to keep it to October because there's a lot of songs. We had Sowing the Seeds of Love, Tears for Fears entered the charts in October of 1989. We had Listen to Your Heart from Roxette entered the charts on the same day and peaked at #1 on November 4th. Dr. Feelgood by Motley Crue would enter the charts a week after this. Did I say Cover Girl by New Kids? Yeah, that came in October 21st, entered the charts. Love in an Elevator from Aerosmith.
Oh, God, that song's awesome.
It holds up.
It's a banger. Ridiculous, but also good. So that's where we were. There's a lot of other songs later. A couple weeks later, the B-52s Love Shack would blow up the chart.
Iconic.
Earning B-52s the critical financial commercial success that they had long deserved.
There we go.
And I'll leave it there. There's so many songs and things we could talk about, but quite an interesting moment in pop music. Meanwhile, in Vermont, there's a little
Yeah.
band making music that would not begin to crack the charts.
No, they're not gonna crack the charts, but they are gonna get their first mention in the national music media this year. In the September and October issue of Relics, they are gonna have a little write-up in the "Too New to Be Known" section that talks about their musical flair and their musicianship and their sense of humor, which I think is pretty cool because they kinda nailed it. So, well done,
Pretty
Relics.
astute. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember reading Relics. I don't think I was reading it yet in '89, but soon after. And I was always looking at that column for bands that were playing clubs and possibly to come around where I was going to be. Although half the time they were like in Texas or New York and not Virginia. But what are you going to do?
Right. It's so cool. Yeah, so they played a lot of shows in 1989, again, upping their show count. They had 97 the year before, and in 1989, they played 126 shows. And this year, really what characterizes this year for them is expansion. This is now when they start touring regularly throughout the East Coast. So they're doing colleges all over New England. They're doing newly opened wetlands in New York City. So that's going to be a place for them to actually go in New York and have like kind of a place where they can where jam bands were going to start to have a home base in New York, which is cool. You've got the 8 by 10 Club in Baltimore, the Roxy in DC, the Living Room in the Providence. They're doing their last shows in Nectar's in March. They're going to outgrow this venue. And then they're going to start to play only at the front, really, in Burlington. And they play there 50 times. So it's going to become super important. But one of the most important shows from this year is actually a very famous show that happens in January, and that's the show that happened at the Paradise in Boston. And they would not book Fish. I'm sure people know about this. So Paluska and Hunter booked the venue, and they carpooled people down. They did radio ads, and they completely packed the place. And there were hundreds of college kids outside trying to get in, and it got them on the radar of like the Boston booking scene. And so that was really impactful. And I think also affected their strategy or influenced their strategy moving forward about doing it themselves. And I think that led to kind of their festival mindset too. Like if people aren't going to book us, we're going to do it ourselves.
I think
is really great.
1989 was kind of, people talk about 96 as an in-between year, musically speaking. I think 1989 was kind of an in-between year in terms of professional direction and maybe even musical direction, where they're still playing college campuses, or even, unless I'm mixing this up with 1988, like college frat houses, even in certain circumstances. But they're also
they
playing,
played a few.
right? But they're also playing the Wetlands, which would come to be like a touchstone place in New York City for up and coming jam bands like the Disco Biscuits, or even at the time the Spin Doctors and Blues Traveler and that cohort. So they were still growing, but they weren't settled yet. They were still figuring out who they were, where they could play, where is their audience, and how many people would come see them, whether announced or unannounced. And I think that comes across in the recording of today's show that Jonathan picked. You could hear it in the background, people chatting. They're just like another bar band in some ways, even though at the time this is like their home venue.
Yeah, at the same time, musically, they sound like, yes, Page's equipment isn't quite what it would soon be, but they sound like Fish more so than anything else we've listened to in this series up to date. They, like, many of the arrangements sound just like the arrangements I heard when I first started seeing this band. And that's why this is one of my like favorite tapes, old tapes. I got this tape in the early 90s and listened to it a lot because not only was it old school Fish and a lot of fun, a little bit different, but at the same time, it was very familiar. It connected to what I was hearing at the time.
Especially in the second set.
Especially in the second set, some of the big numbers, which we will get to. Should we get into like the first set here?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing that we have to mention is that
please.
Kuroda starts taking over lights in April, and that's a big deal. So we've got to mention that.
He gets a special shout out in this show in the second set, but we'll get to that too.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to call it that,
I also wanted to say that they debuted 41 new songs this year. So we've got songs like Split Open and Melt, the Mango Song, Bathtub Gin, Okipa, Punch You in the Eye, My Sweet One, Reba, Kung, and Lawnboy. So you've got some really, really heavy hitters this year. And also they released Junta, self-released it, and we're selling it at shows. So it's a really big year for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mind if I run down the set?
Let's do it.
So set 1 is Harpua, into Bundle of Joy, into Colonel Forbins, into Mockingbird, into You Enjoy Myself. There's a lot of arrows here. Maybe you could question them. Into the Okipa Ceremony, into Reba, into Divided Sky, the Golgi Apparatus to wrap up the set. That's a lot of bang for your buck. That's a lot for one set.
Is Harpua the best show opener ever? Like, boom, you're in a Fish show. You know, like
Yeah, it's great.
It doesn't have that like papa opening that we know now, and it's only like 90 seconds, but it's just amazing. I feel like it's just like catapults you into the world of Fish instantly.
Sort of, but it's not the world that we've come to know.
No.
But when Harpua opens a show into Bundle of Joy, it's immediately apparent to me listening to this show. And Jonathan, this is the first time I've listened to this show.
Oh,
ever.
Wow.
I didn't have a lot of tapes from early Fish. So but it was immediately apparent to me in retrospect that by this point, they've kind of already established their personality, musical personality, as like progressive savant nerds who are very serious about their music, even as silly as it does sound. And they've also put together a bunch of these complex but very short, compelling pieces of music, some with, some without. Harpua, I think, on the track list is like 2 minutes.
Yeah,
because it's really
long.
just the like first chunk of the song, no narration, and it doesn't have the final bit of the song.
Right.
Just like the beginning. Nowadays, if they played just this, people would be so fucking mad. If you, I don't know if you guys remember the outrage after the Clifford Ball, where they I think did a pretty cool high concept thing where the story hasn't taken off and have the gliders and it's a little mistimed but and then they don't finish Harpua and people were just mad all over the internet. Even
unless they showed up at the Great Went when they picked it up.
Well, but there was a year later, so everybody was stewing for so long, and then at the Great Went they gave us the second half, and that was very cool. This is a pretty cool little thing, and it does something that I want Fish to do again, which is it has just the standalone Bundle of Joy.
Be amazing.
Which is so rad and weird.
The way I thought about that, though, which it's very disconcerting to modern ears when you hear Harpua into Bundle of Joy, because it's so many missing pieces, even though all these songs that we know now are now the sum of their parts, right? I mean, very literally. To me,
but
when
that's
I was
like
listening,
why it's the best listening to this, because it's like you hear the evolution.
It's the best listening the second time. Because the first time, it's like, I don't know what I'm hearing. The image that came to me when listening to this opening Harpua Bundle of Joy, it's obvious that they have all these really great, short, compelling, complex pieces of music, but they don't know where they fit yet in the larger picture. It's what came to me is like this old adage of in a jail, the prisoner who builds a glider in the prison basement to go over the wall, but then realizes he can't fit the glider outside of the basement door. Like they know they have all these amazing pieces, but how do they use them now? And this show is kind of them figuring that out.
Right. And that's what they were doing at this time. That said, I still think it's a great opportunity to mess with people like yourself by putting this on and just like defying expectations, because Fish is good at, if nothing else, defying expectations, and it's just another way they could do that. So please, Bundle of Joy standalone anytime. Thanks.
And I will say,
please.
That metaphor, that like story you were telling us, Brian, it's actually really apt, because that's kind of what Fish was doing. They were building these like epic compositions in bars and in like really small rooms, and they have this like, Trey's compositional vision is so vast and like just astounding, and he was performing in really humble spaces. And I think that it's so cool to watch them find out where these pieces go and put it all together. Like the fact that they were able to do that while playing 126 shows a year, driving all around, not making much money, like it just speaks to their genius.
Yeah, and at some point the full force of Fluffhead would explode in an arena, and it would be amazing without a question. Um, so Forbin's Mockingbird, again, love listening to these songs at this time frame because of the precision is really high. Paige gives us this cool Jeopardy tease in the at the beginning of Mockingbird, which is pretty cool. We were riding in the car to the mountains yesterday, listening to it. I was like, "Oh, Jeopardy tease!" Drove my wife crazy when stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love the way this one plays out.
And they play that 4-note, 7-note little lick every time they ever play this song, but they really lean into it here, which is them still figuring out how much should we play this? How much should we reference this hugely popular television game show? Maybe we just lift a little bit from it and let it go there.
It's all in the phrasing. Like it is it Jeopardy? This time it's Jeopardy. Then they play it again, but they don't play it again. You know, it's just in exactly.
Well, it's like Let It Be and Sleeping Monkey.
Yeah. Well, no, that one's just like a lift.
That's just a straight up. Well, Jonathan,
no hiding that.
You mentioned the precision, right? You said how you like that. It also is very slow. They're playing a lot of these songs at rehearsal pace, which is good. It adds to the precision, but you can tell how they're not as lightning fast confident as they would become with it in a year, 2.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm really excited to get into like 91.
Yeah.
And we're still pre-jam and we're getting into like just like lightning fingers stuff. But that's getting ahead of ourselves a little.
But it is kind of cool because that's how they were playing these songs then. I don't even know that it was rehearsal place. It's just where they were. Like, you know, you can hear that they are trying new stuff all the time. So they are playing things slower because they're so complicated. And I think going into this, this You Enjoy Myself is amazing. I mean, Paige is just absolutely killing it. Trey's solo is incredible. Mike has this like funky breakdown solo. I mean, it's such a good version. I love the yums from like this time period.
It's a good version. Paige is really high in the mix at this point in the set, which does get corrected for second set, I think. But yeah, I really like this. Brian, what'd you think?
I like that You Enjoy Myself as well. I wrote that it sounds deliberate, which instead of slow, because it is slow, but it's very practiced. But it sounds very much like the studio version of Junta, and a lot of these songs are on Junta, and that kind of goes to the set list construction of this whole show, where a lot of the songs that appear on Junta are almost sound identical to when they played live, to the recording speed and as precise as they are as they're played here. I also thought that, I don't know, some of the instruments you mentioned, like Paige's earlier, Jonathan, I thought Mike's bass and Fishman's toms sound very cheap here. But Trey, on
Mike's
the other
bass,
hand,
you can hear it like twanging sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
you could hear his finger sliding up the neck of it. But Trey, he is very, very precise with his tone. And I'm sure they all believed in this music. I think it's inaccurate to just point out Trey, but it's worth noting, and this could be wrong, but I think every single song in this first set was written by Trey or credited to Fish.
Yeah.
He is really the forefront. He is pushing this and he believes in this music.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and no covers here in this set.
Right.
Yeah, they're playing so many less covers. Yeah, it's incredible. I think the Reba is interesting. It's really slow. Trey flubs the lyrics. This is only the third time they played it. They debuted it at the front 3 weeks earlier. So it's brand new. And God, Reba is a tough song, you know, and it's amazing thinking about them playing Reba for the first time. It's an undertaking, you know, and they've got that like bag it, tag it refrain that they're playing over the blues.
I love
riff,
that bit. It's so weird.
So good. Yeah. And it's
great.
Yeah, it's not there anymore, but that instrumental bridge between like the lyrics and the composed section, it's really great. It's fun to hear it and just imagine this song and its humble beginnings.
This is the third time it's ever been played.
Yeah, third time. It debuted 3 weeks earlier, so at the front as well. So it's brand new.
And Megan, you mentioned how complicated it is, how hard it is. It is, but it's not even as complicated as it would become. Yet Fishman is playing a lot of his parts in a 4/4 basic drum beat throughout the jam part, whereas later, like the version that we know, for example, or even the version that was recorded on Lawn Boy, is a lot more tom heavy. It's a lot more percussion heavy, not just something that if you took a random competent drummer out of the crowd to just play a simple 4/4 beat. That's what Fishman does for a lot of this Reba. And it shows that they're never satisfied, right? They know that they're not there yet. Again, this one is not fully baked. It's like some other songs earlier in the set.
Yeah, that like instrumental bridge part that they later dropped, according to Fish.net, was later evolved into "Don't Get Me Wrong," a song that was co-written with John Popper, which they only played a few times in 1990. Maybe we have to find one of those shows for.
It was played at the show that Sue Drew picked out.
Yeah, cool.
Really good vision at the Marquee 1990. So
it's
check
a cool
that
song,
one out.
Actually.
Yeah, it is. And it's funny you say that because I wrote in my notes, I'm surprised this lick didn't find its way into a different Fish song. And then in parentheses, I wrote, wait, did it?
There you go.
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
It all comes from somewhere. Trey wrote every piece of music that Fish has ever played back in that cabin in 1988, and now he's just been trotting them out for the last 40 years.
Exactly. They just
Show of Life was written in the late 80s.
Yeah, Show of Life was written, and Summer of '89 was written in 1988.
Yeah, exactly. Who knew?
So good. Yeah, and then we've got a beautiful Divided Sky and a really fun Golgi to close the set. It gets cut off on the recording I heard, but it sounded great.
Yeah, it's a little too bad, but this is what's going to happen when people are making recordings with analog tapes and probably drinking beers at the bar and whatever instead of watching their
Well, I like that because in Reba at 8 minutes, you could hear people chatting in the background. Like you would, even if, when I was in a band post-college and we were playing whatever bar that would have us, most people would not be listening. And
that's normal.
Of course it's not. Well, that's what we tell ourselves, guys like us. But,
Wait, what are you trying to lump me into here, man?
Yeah, seriously.
I've been in a lot of bars.
Jonathan plays.
I've been in a lot of bands, and it's always the same. But my point is, though, it's fun. We think about Fish, whether they're playing huge getaway resort shows or they're playing 7 nights at Madison Square Garden this summer, this mega touring mechanism. And in 1989, they were every other schmuck bar band that no matter how complex or precise they're playing, I'd rather be having an Narragansett and talking to my friend next to me. It doesn't really matter.
Always chompers. But, exactly. Also this goes to the point that tapers are probably in the back. They're not set up at the stage lip where if anybody is there to just listen to the music and dance, they're up front. They're not back
they're
where the
right
tape
up front.
rig is anyways. So that just such is life. Unless you're at an early aughts Kimmock band show and the rig is set up right on the front of the stage, you're going to get that. So,
but I will say, I think there were a lot of people that were there to dance and listen in 1989 at the front, and they were yelling and excited. And yeah, I think there were a lot of people that were super into them at this point, seeing them multiple nights in a row.
Well, I'd love to know who their crowd was, I guess, is what even though I'm talking with declarative sentences, I'm really asking. What do you think their crowd looked like?
I mean, I think it was a mix. Like what I've read is that, from people like Amy Skelton saying that it was a mix, kind of like it is today, with like the frat boys, having beers, those are the guys in the back talking, and then the hippies up front, kind of like dancing and listening, just like a Fish show today.
Yeah, I mean, Burlington's a college town,
maybe a lot less devoted. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they have their actual fans in the room. There's also going to be a lot of walk-ins and, hey, let's go see the band that's playing. And, just as happens at every show that Brian has played no, I'm kidding, Brian. Just as happens at any bar, there's plenty of people who are in there just because they, let's talk during music and drink beer and, I don't know, meet women or boys or whatever you're into and not listen to the music. I don't really understand that. If you want to talk to me, do not approach me during the music. At a show, find me at set break. Find me before the show because I got nothing to say when the band is on.
They close with the Divided Sky and Golgi, and I thought by set break that the songs that were recorded for Junta seemed like fresh, ready to go out of the box and practiced and rehearsed, but mixed in the songs that they were getting ready to record for Lawn Boy which would come out, I believe, next year in
Mhm.
1990, they seemed a little bit, they were still tooling with some of them, like
Yeah, well, they're
Yeah.
Reba,
brand
for
new,
example.
right? They're
Yeah.
brand new. Yeah, and they're gonna get the money to record the first 4 songs of that album because they won a Battle of the Bands early
The
in the
Rock
year.
Rumble, which is
Yeah.
mentioned at it happened right before that Ian's Farm show in
Mhm.
I think it was in May of '89. Yes, sorry, I've heard of that.
So cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I love that they're starting to find ways to make money doing this too. It's pretty impressive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So,
Set
Jonathan, you wanna
two.
tell us what set 2 was? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. So set two kicks off with "I Didn't Know," which has Fishman on trombone. I told you there'd be horns, right? But it also has a couple other guys, Dave Grippo and Russ Remington sitting in. And those guys stick around for AC/DC Bag into Donna Lee and Split Open and Melt 1.5 times. Harry Hood. And then where are we? Oh, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot in a Hole, which is a first known performance.
Yep.
Slave to the Traffic Light and Run Like an Antelope. Pretty good set on paper. How does it hold up to you guys?
It
It,
sounds great with the horns, I thought. I think the flow is really, really good too. This is an example of where the jazz songs like Donna Lee and Swing Low, they don't take the energy out of the set, like the show we listened to for last week. Like I think they sound really good. What do you think, Brian?
I thought that it was very much, as Jonathan said before, that a lot of these songs are as structured. They're the modern versions of the songs that we know today. So Harry Hood, for example, if they were on different instruments and played in a larger venue, but note for note played the one at October 20th, 1989, wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Mhm.
These are the ones that are a little bit more structured and stay consistent until the day, today. I did like the jazz versions because I know this is right in the middle of or in between when they're doing the Johnny B. Fishman Jazz Ensemble shows.
Yeah.
So I know this was a forced brush up on those chops. And I really like that. A band, and you went down, I'm sorry, Jonathan, you went down all the different popular music at the time.
Yeah.
You know, how many times do you think Aerosmith or Janet Jackson said to themselves, you know what, we're really not nailing this type of music, this genre. Maybe we should take a break and try and nail down four-way harmonies or knock down jazz. They were really in their own insulated world and they were
Oh,
able
yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Johnny B. Fishman Jazz Ensemble, as Trey
Ensemble.
pronounces it at
Ensemble.
one point in this set, is a growing concern, and they, I guess, had a roughly weekly thing, moving to the Radisson, which had
I love
25
that.
TVs on a wall. And let's remember that these were not flat screens. 25 TVs on a wall. Wow.
Oh my god, you're right. That takes a
Sounds
lot to mount
terrifying.
those. Yeah, I know. Trey was totally trolling him. It was
Yeah,
so funny
he
in the
was
show. Yeah.
trolling the Radisson. He was
Yeah.
trolling television. I love it. But let's get into this. So it's funny. They open with "I Didn't Know," which is always good for a larf. And Fishman's trombone playing is definitely shown up by the actual professional proper
Yeah.
horn players. But again, it's fun and
Trey
funny.
says he can sure play that thing. Trey's words.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at him go. Great bag, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
So good with the horns. Like, yes. Sounds
the
so
energy
good.
is high on that. I
Yeah.
think it's just what a great, and I don't think I've talked about this. It's a ridiculous song. So, like a thing you think of if you're writing a pop song, and is to think about like you got to generate a hook, a lyrical hook, right? That is like the ideal. And a lot of songwriters will lean into maybe a popular phrase of the time, or they try to coin one and just kind of coin some sort of seemingly obvious phrase that maybe nobody else has said. This song is almost entirely built from cliches, like lyrically. Everything, put them in a field and let them fight it out. This is a thing that somebody has said before. Every line from this song is built on that stuff. And it's astounding that they pull it off and make it listenable. But the other thing that it does is that they can sing this song front of an audience that hasn't heard it before, and you're gonna like maybe 5 times out of 10, you're gonna know what the next word is, even though you've never heard the
Mm.
song.
I never
It's a
thought
good
about it
trick.
like that. That's so smart. I never thought about it like that. It's so tongue in cheek, the whole thing too. And it just, yeah, this is
Yeah.
so great. I never thought about it like that. And it's really cool to think that it's a
I
way
don't
to
know
make
how
the audience
deliberate that
engaged.
is, but
Yeah, I wonder.
it's so chock full of these phrases, euphemisms and aphorisms and things that they must have been doing it on purpose. Although, again, for a laugh, I'm sure.
I think they were doing it on
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah.
and because it goes, if you go all the way back to Alumni Blues, right?
Right.
There's I didn't have no legs is the joke because everything was
Mhm.
about rhyming with shoes,
Right.
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's obviously that last rhyme, the rhyme scheme at the end of every other line or whatever it may be. There's thought put into it, right? AC/DC Bag was written
Oh,
as
yeah.
part of Trey's thesis. He probably felt super smart for doing it, and
And you know what? He was.
yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
still sing it.
Yeah, we're talking about it today. Well done.
Yeah.
I love this Donna Lee too. It's so good. And they played the song 25 times through like 1988 to 1991. And the last time, though, they played it that one other time in 1993 in the middle of a David Bowie. And Jonathan, I have been waiting all week to hear your thoughts. I haven't listened to that version, but
I haven't
I
listened to that in
want to know
ages.
what you think about Donna Lee inside Bowie.
Give it to me anytime. Let's have it. Donna Lee is a great tune, and I think they do a reasonable justice to the thing here.
Yeah,
Of course, the horn players are what make it, and uh, it's beautiful, and I want to hear it again.
me too.
Me
This is
So
a
too, with
jazz standard, I
horns.
think, with
yes,
horns.
sure.
Yeah.
With horns,
Yeah.
without horns. No, I'll take it with the quartet. Let's have Trey bust out his favorite Charlie Parker lines. Come on, Trey. You remember
Mm.
those? Paige, let's get into it. What are you gonna do? You're gonna lean into the clav. You're gonna go into the Fender Rhodes, little organ. What's it gonna be? I want it. It's not even a request now. It's a dare.
Whoa.
Yes. All right. You heard it
Well,
here, Fish.
I had the thought during Donna
Did
Lee
they?
with the horns that because
they didn't.
I did it backwards because I got onto Fish before I even heard of Frank Zappa, before I knew who he was. But listening to them play
Same.
Donna Lee, I could see how people who love Zappa stuck around after they heard Fish. You know, because people get into Fish for a billion different reasons, whether it's
Right.
musical dexterity, whether it's prog. You know, I got into Fish first because I was into huge classic rock, and they had obviously a lot of the same favorites that I did. They played Quadrophenia, and to me, it's like, well, they must be the best band ever now, I guess. And so,
I'm
but
just here for the jokes.
Or you like drugs.
but Donna Lee, it's right, or you like drugs. But Donna Lee sounds like it could be a Zappa song in a sense, with the horns mixed in with this really fast, dexterous playing. And I don't know,
Yeah.
that's where my brain went while listening to Donna Lee. Big applause on this, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's well received. It's probably some dancing, maybe.
I hope
Um,
so. And
do
then
you
we
think
go into
anybody
Split
danced?
Open and Melt.
Parts
Yeah, I was
1
gonna
and
say,
2.
think anybody danced to
Yeah.
this next one? So
Yeah,
let's
I
tell.
don't.
I want
This
to
is
tell
good.
everybody what happened here.
Yes.
If you haven't
Yes.
listened to this
Explain
show,
it.
which you should have listened to this show by now, it's not like we didn't tell you at some point on the internet what it would be. But um, they're going to play Split Open and Melt with the horns. The horn players, they have charts on the stage. They get into the quiet bit, and then like 3 minutes into the song, and when the lights go off and they can't see the music, and Trey's like, God damn it, hang on. And he's like, it's going to be so cool. And then the fucking lights went off. We're going to do it again and leave the lights on. Poor Chris.
But it's so great because he's like, I'm sorry, but I was so psyched for this. Like, this was going to be the coolest thing we were going to do all night. It was just,
He was.
to
He's
me,
so
it just
jazzed.
really spoke to like how serious like Trey takes this. And like that just, it was so cute because I think he thought they were going to then pick it up from there. But instead, I think Fishman just starts the beat from the beginning and Trey's like, all right, we're doing the whole thing again.
And then
So-
they nail it.
Start it.
Is the coolest
nail it.
thing that was going to happen all night when we see
Yeah.
Split Open and Melt now, because the whole screw up was during the acapella, the down,
Exactly.
where all the different
And
trusses of Crow to go, Like they all go from.
Yes.
Was that the thing? Did he have that idea already in 1989? Because I still love it.
I think the lights were a bit simpler then.
Of course they were, but I'm wondering because that's the part they cut it off.
He might just have been lowering the lights.
I think he just lowered because it's not the first time they played Split Open and Melt. Unlike Reba, they've been playing Split Open and Melt since the beginning, since February of '89. So,
but also like a really hard song.
Oh yeah,
and then this is the 16th time they've played it, so like this is a tough song.
But the first with the horns, and that's
true.
They're the ones trying to read sheet music, and then they can't because Kuroda's like, this would be cool if I make it dark. And any other time, it was cool, but there were no horns then. So anyways, yeah, the next time they don't turn the fucking lights off. Thanks, Chris. And and it's awesome. It's so cool. This is the first time we're hearing the proper horns arrangement, or the beginning really of the horns arrangement, because they had to embellish it for the full Giant Country horns later of this song, and it's just awesome. I'm not even using good language to describe the significance of this performance to me as a listener. I think that this is like you're really tapping into the wider scope of Fish and Trey's genius when you hear what they're doing here for the first time.
I totally agree. I think this whole set is incredible. Absolutely incredible. And a must listen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then we go into Hood. And again, you've got the horns on this like jazzy intro. Trey's doing something like super funky. I think it's Trey. He must have pedals or something. He sounds like really funky. And it was interesting, Jonathan, because when I was listening to it, I was thinking about you because remember, I think, was it in a bonus episode recently? I won't spill it too much because, those are special, but we were talking about the Hood chant, and you were saying that there's music that the band would be playing if people weren't yelling.
Something that happened.
Chant. Yeah.
Yes. That's true in Stash too. I miss Fishman's woodblocks.
Yep.
Bring them back.
Yeah. So you would be hearing, you can hear it in this version, what they would be doing if we weren't yelling. So it was actually the first time that I thought about that while I was listening to it, and I see what you're saying. I'm not saying I'm against the Hood chant like you are, but I'm just saying.
I'm not going to try to change your mind, although you should. But thank you for hearing my point.
This is the beginning. Yeah, I did hear your point. Yeah. This is the beginning of me changing my mind.
Nice version of this Harry Hood. We were coming back from the mountains listening to this set and had tried to explain to my son what the words were about. And he was like, that's ridiculous. And I was like, yes, it is.
Exactly.
Let's hear some more.
I mean, they're not a jam band yet, obviously, right? They're open to playing different versions and playing with their music, but they're not jamming. I mean, the longest track is You Enjoy Myself, and that's just because it's the composition itself is, I think, 16 minutes. But this version of jamming is Trey soloing while the rest of the band plays 3 chords over and over again at the end of Hood.
Yeah, it's funny. You say they're not a jam band yet, but it's really a case of they were not a jam band anymore for a while. Because
I think even
earlier they were.
In 88, they were playing. I mean, in Colorado, they were definitely doing some jamming.
But yeah, you're right. At this point, they are a much more concise group.
Am I allowed to talk to the host of the Broke Down podcast with a Grateful Dead comparison on a Fish podcast? Am I allowed to do it?
Here?
Do it.
Yeah.
Let me just put on my... Okay.
All right. Now you look ready. Okay. So in the late 60s or mid to late 60s, when the Grateful Dead would just jam like crazy, that 6-song set list with the 11, St. Stephen, all that.
Our St. Stephen.
Yeah. And then when the late 60s and like 1970 came around, they became so prolific in their songwriting that Working Man's Dead and American Beauty kind of forced them to become much more concise. Mm-hmm. They had to tighten up because they were just becoming so much more creative. They were serving the songs instead of serving the jam. And that's what's happening with Fish here, because there's almost already a new album's worth of music in these sets as well. And it would become Lawn Boy. So you're right. They expanded earlier in their career. I'm talking about Fish now, because they had to maybe fill time, or they were just kind of exploring themselves as a group and as musicians. Now they've kind of explored themselves and now trying to hunker down into a direction, which is where these songs are taking us.
And they're attempting to be more marketable. They're attempting to go and play
hang on.
venues and places they've never
I
played.
object to that altogether. This band, Split Open and Melt, is in no way an attempt to be marketable. And if it is,
I don't mean marketable like that. I mean going and they're playing their music for people that have never heard them before. And if you do that, you want to play lots of songs. You don't want to play a 35-minute jam because they're not going to remember
you. But I think that what they're really doing is more what Brian is saying, is that they've got this material and they are honing it. They are dialing it in so they can put it on the record, but also so that they can play the absolute best version of Harry Hood. And little did they know it would be many years. But
yeah, exactly. They probably did know.
That's a whole other episode. But you know, they were, and same for Split Open and Melt, you know, and all of this. They were trying to just focus. Trying to focus. Trey is off the leash, right? There's no other guitar player who isn't willing or ready to keep up. Everybody is all in. Yeah. Trey has got on through a variety of, number of writing sessions and time and working with Ernie Stiers and all of these things that are shaping him. It's got all of this material to bring to the table. Now it's time to let's get this right. You can still go back a few months and go to some other shows where they get loose and get sloppy, but that's not what this show, this show is about. This show is about, we're going to come out and kick some ass. We're going to do a set with the horns, and then we're going to kick some ass again for set 3. We're
going to have fun.
And we're going to have fun. Yeah. But we're going to kick the ass tight. So let's finish this set 2 because we got a bunch more to get into. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it. I think it's cool. I think it's rad. The horns are really nice. A little more good. Johnny B. Fishman Jazz Ensemble, again, playing for anybody who has good documentation and details on that group and stuff. Where is it? Bring it out. And then one of my all-time favorite Fish songs, In a Hole. It's a fun song. Page sings it. He does a great job.
He sounds amazing.
The chorus is I'm an a-hole. It's just great. Why can't we have more of that?
I know his voice is like butter. I mean, it sounds so good. This is the debut, like you mentioned earlier, Jonathan. They're going to only play this song 8 times. The last time in December of this year, 1989. So it's not going to last very long. But
until Mexico.
Good while it was there. Until comes back in Mexico. In the middle of Bowie.
2 years ago or 3 years ago, they played Sea and Sand in Mexico. If that can come back, anything can come back.
I'm going to cry just thinking about that again.
Yeah, me too.
Oh.
Megan, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Take it.
I though, to your point about Paige sounding so good, I would 100% take this over I've Been Around. If they could flip out.
We don't have to forsake something else.
If you had to.
This is not, we don't have to cut the baby in half.
I have to think about that one before I decide on which one I want better, but I would love to hear this. It sounds so good. Paige's voice in these late 80s shows is incredible.
Yep. How good is this Slave, you guys?
Before Slave, I just want to jump in. Right. Did you notice after In a Hall that there was a guy in the audience calling for Mike's song? So
I didn't hear that.
They already have their favorites. That there's already people who are shouting at the band from the front row to play the song they want to hear.
Last week, we did an 88 show, which had the first full Mike's Groove.
Oh, fun.
And here we are in 89, and it's regular in the rotation, just not on this night. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, guys.
Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so thank you, Brian. But how good is this Slave?
Oh my God. The peak is just, Paige and Trey just sound absolutely gorgeous. It's so beautiful. It's perfect.
It ends with the same power that will become expected in the next couple of years. That makes Slave the set closer. It's there already. It's nascent, but it's there.
Yeah.
With or without the horns. The horns are really nice in this, but it still carries the same weight and delicacy. Like it walks that balance beautifully. And yeah, really
Yeah, this is a
terrific
song that they're
performance.
like already nailing now. Just so amazing. And then they close out the set with Antelope, super jazzy, so
Rips.
groovy. Talk about having fun. Like when they're talking in the beginning and they're like, Marco Esquandoles. And then they're like, oh, motherfucker. I mean, they just sound super playful. Like they're feeling it. They're just
Yeah.
having fun. It rips. It sounds so good. Super, super good.
It kind of reminds me this and this song and like the whole next set reminds me of that 11-1 vibe when they play 11-1, you know, where they're past the thing that they were working hard for. They feel good about how it went,
Yeah.
and now we
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
let's go.
I love that. I also love Incredible Purpose calling for a modern horn sit-in on Slaverhood with James Casey. I fully support that.
That would be fine.
Yeah, you'd have to be a
Yeah.
More than
monster
fine.
not to support that.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
with Run
That guy's
Like
out
an
there.
Antelope, yeah. There's this at the end. I wrote it at about 7 minutes as a timestamp where it's like when Stefan Curry, when you see him on like TikTok or on Instagram, and he does these crazy trick shots from like out in the middle of the seats in the Chase Center or from half court doing like an over the head loop, and he makes all of them. That's what I feel like this Run Like an Antelope sounds like. It's insanity that you shouldn't be able to do this with your instruments, but they all are doing it at the most intense speed, double time intensity, and the horns on top of it, all the way through the Rai Rai Rocco portion. And you think that someone's going to slip on a banana at some point.
Yeah.
They're just going too fast. Like it can't hold. The center can't hold, but it does. And it thrills me even listening to it. I can't do math. What is it? 26 years later? I'm bad.
No, it would be if there's a 4 in there, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah,
89.
shit. I'm
It's
really
like a
bad.
30, 36, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I'm only 21 years old by that math. So there we go.
There you go.
There you go. That sounds great.
But I couldn't believe what they were doing. And I could say the same thing about that part of Antelope 100 times from this point forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it just rips, and the fact that a bar band is doing this.
Yeah.
I mean, I say that with a kind of denigrating tone on purpose because a lot of people would, you know, they're just a bar band. But Jesus
Yeah.
Christ, guys, look what the hell! It's so intense, so good. I would pay so much good money to be able to watch a proper video of this.
Right? Oh, yeah. That would be amazing.
I look
That'd
for
be
one.
amazing.
There are videos of not this show, but earlier in October
Yeah.
at the front, there are videos up on YouTube. They're not very good quality, but they are there. But they're
Yeah.
matched up with soundboard recording, so
Nice.
you could get the
But I want
gist.
this.
Yeah,
Anyway.
this
I
one.
know. I want another archival release from this year. I mean, we only have one, and it's
It's
sad.
Townsend Park, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only
It's a
one.
great show.
Mhm. Yeah.
Set 3.
All right. This is like the, I don't know, this is like after you've won something, what
It's
you
like a
come on and play, right?
Juicy encore
It's like
more than
fun, yeah.
anything.
When the crowd
Like-
chants one more song, and the sound guy doesn't have to go home yet. So he's like, yeah, all right, whatever. Play another couple
Fine.
songs.
Last call. All right. No dogs allowed into Walk Away. Dinner and a movie into LaGrange. Let's get our covers
wanted-
in, shall we?
Yeah, exactly. So good. There's not that many covers in the show, but the ones that are here are really good. And
Yeah.
this Dinner and a Movie stood out to me. It's so fun to hear them like yelling and making sounds and just having fun. This is one of the first songs that I heard when I was starting to learn Fish, and I was like, oh, okay, this like defines Fish to me. It's like no one would write a song like this except Fish. Like it's silly lyrics, dark undertones, and these like ascending scales. It just has this like kind of creepiness to it, but then it's, you know, got these very like plain, simple, weird lyrics. I think it's so good, and I like this version a lot.
Do you think you were listening to the Junta version, which has like the table service sounds as well?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so weird.
Love that.
Well, that description could describe a lot of songs off Junta.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah,
you're talking
exactly.
about simple lyrics, descending scales, little creepy atmosphere, that could just as well be Contact. That could just as well
Yeah.
be David Bowie. That was their MO for
Yep.
the time. But as they're foraying into different methods now at this show, right? That was already, because Junta was released in 1988, wasn't it? at least on tape?
89, yeah.
89?
Yeah.
Okay.
In April, they started selling it, or in the spring, they were selling it in shows
Right.
on cassette.
It
Yeah.
Well,
very well could have been on the table in the back of the front on this very night.
Yeah. Probably
oh,
was.
back of the front. I see what you
Yeah.
did there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the back of the front.
But it's
I got you.
I was just going to
Okay.
say real quick about that, about the album. It's very much like when a movie is released. By the time the movie gets to theaters, it's have been filmed for a year already. It's
Yeah.
over for the actors and the producers and the directors. Just like Fish, when they're releasing Junta to be for sale, they're already past that. They're working on this music for another album. So
I mean,
to
that's the case with most folks. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
when the Beatles were putting out records, they were actually turning around singles really fast, like
5
you could
times a
record
year
it
for the
and it would be
Beatles.
out, but they would record it and it would be out in weeks, and that's nobody moves that fast anymore,
Yeah.
unless it's all digital. And even that, they're not moving that fast nowadays. If you're making albums and making physical stuff, you are working a year ahead, and you
Mhm.
don't think of it that way. I'm writing songs now that if they would end up on an album, that won't happen. That album has no shape and won't exist until at least next year
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
earliest.
Just
And
takes a long
that's
time.
normal. And even then, as an independent group, they're having to earn the money to pay for their studio time. And it takes time to make a record, takes time to get it put out. And yeah,
They wouldn't be signed
all
by
that stuff is
Elektra.
old.
They wouldn't be signed by Elektra until over a year from this show, until
Well, they had a
December
Go-Go Records put out Long
to
Boy
distribute
first.
it. Yes.
And then that fell apart. But I
Right,
got a
but
Yeah.
copy, so
right, but they didn't. But Go-Go didn't pay for their studio time. Like they
Right.
weren't a national
Mhm.
distributor.
right.
Anyway,
So I just wanted to highlight one track from this third set. I just love the Lagrange.
Yes. Me too.
Rips. It's dirty, just as
Mhm.
this song ought to be. And it is kind of an area of the band that is not heard at all in this previous two sets.
Yeah, you're
Uh,
right.
Nasty, gritty rock.
Oh,
And
it's so
I'm
good.
all
It really
for it.
suits them. Yeah, it's like rollicking. It gets fast. They have these great little peaks. And it just is such a tremendous way to end the set. And they're just like, see you tomorrow night. I think it really is a good exclamation point at the end of the set. And I really want to hear Fish play this song. Just
in
trying to
Mexico.
manifest that. In Mexico. Anywhere. MSG, Mexico. I want to hear it.
So
Yeah.
takeaways. Brian, you're our guest. I'm going to start with you. Pick on you first. What do you come away with after listening to this show as a whole, as a time capsule of 1989? Not necessarily indicative of all of the year, but a moment. I think an important moment from the year.
I see it as not quite tying a ribbon on it, but kind of what is it, a biblical verse? When I became a grown up, I put away childish things. I think that's kind of where they're seeing themselves in terms of music production. You said that they're owning these new songs, they're honing them, they're making them a little tighter. And this early 90s, I know this is 89, but it's the third quarter of, of
Oh no, yet
1989.
this thing that we have here is not dissimilar to what we have in 3 months, which is 1990.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Right. So I
Yeah.
see them not quite putting away, but saying, all right, we nailed the multi-part epics. There's still a few more to go, right? Like Reba, we still need to tie that up, but we're going to focus a little more on the songs now. And that's what I see moving forward. Megan listed a lot of the debuts from 1989, and there's going to be only more coming in 1990. So I think that they're going to say, we're going to be more of a song-focused band as opposed to a 30-minute whipping post that might have come out,
Yeah.
a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. Awesome though it may be, but now
Bring it back.
we're going to start looking to be a professional band. And to do that, we need to build up our audience. To do that, we have to build up our live show. That's the big takeaway. They're turning the page, but the page is not quite turned.
well put, I think. Megan,
Thank you.
how about you?
Yeah. I mean, I would just second what Brian said. I think it's that growth. They're trying to grow their fan base. And I think when I said marketable before, I meant become more, grow your
Just messing
base. I
with you.
didn't mean like marketing. I meant like they need to get more fans, and they realize that by
Sure.
doing that, they have to put on shows where they, show their best foot, and I think or put their best foot forward. And I think the way that they do that is with their songwriting and their incredible musicianship. And I think that they're tightening up, so it's this kind of like growth outward and like a tightening up of their songs and their music and their skills.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, these guys have been pushing and growing and finding their footing for a long time as we've been moving through the years in this series. Now we are on the cusp of the 90s.
I know, I can't believe it.
I don't know. Does the next decade start on the year 0 or the year 1? Who knows? It doesn't matter. It's 1989. The 80s were almost done. Good riddance to them. This is a band of the 90s that we are hearing take shape right here. And yeah, it's a fun show. If any of you listening have not listened to 10/20/89, you're missing out. This is the good stuff. So please check it out.
Yeah, I have to say I'm a little sad to leave the 80s because I've never listened to this much 1980s Fish, and it's just I've learned so much, and I've just loved this exercise. So I am sadly saying goodbye to the 80s. Who would have ever thought I said that? But next week we're going to pause 40 for 40 because we're going to have our big Mexico recap on Monday. And we'll be back the week after that with the first show that we're going to talk about from 1990. Very exciting.
Whatever that may be.
Yeah, we'll keep you waiting. We'll let you know.
Yeah,
But
keep an eye
thanks.
on the Instagram,
Yeah.
and Megan will announce it in advance after she's back from Mexico and whatever recovery is required there. We'll have a decision
Thanks
of
for
what we're
giving me
going to
some
listen
time,
to.
Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I want that on my desk Monday morning.
Okay.
You
You got it, sir.
I am going to send you some other 80s Fish to listen to on your plane ride.
Ooh, I
Just
love
for
that.
fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
yes. There's nothing
And
more I like than getting playlists from anyone in this group.
Brian, thank you so much for listening to the show and jumping on to join us and talk about it. It's been a lot of fun to have you here. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Like I said earlier, it's a joy to talk about underheard shows, shows that may
Yeah.
deserve to be heard but haven't been. So this is one of them. And just real quick to anyone listening, my show is called Attendance Bias. It is a podcast very different from this one. So to vary your tastes up stylistically, still about fish. But I have fans come on, they pick a show or even a jam that was just very special to them for any given reason. And I have them tell their story. So you could search for Attendance Bias. It's 2 words, exactly as they're spelled, on any podcast app. And you could also email me if you have a really good story, or even if it's in your own head, really good. Just email me, attendancebias@gmail.com. But Megan, Jonathan, and everyone involved at the HF Pod, thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Brian. And thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you next week. Have a great week and have fun, everybody going to Mexico. Say hi if you see
Yeah,
me.
travel safe.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.